This is the Making Noise podcast.
I mean, at that point too, you can probably have a pretty negative outlook on it. Then, if you're like breaking your back over it, and then you come to dislike it.
Yeah, I mean, it's things don't happen overnight most of the time, and so like you got to kind of again keep at it for a long period, and then you can find those tipping points later. Yeah, I've seen it time and time. Like some people try it too soon, and they get burned out fast because you're fighting against something that's not generating enough income to live.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that have kind of taken on the side and built it slowly over time, oftentimes I see those tipping points happen with my colleagues, and then they make the jump and then they find, oh, I have just enough to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest from there is just growth. And they keep doing what they do and they grow from there.
This is making me think on one, the podcast I actually just released like 20 minutes ago, or however long, was with Alan Tyson, Megan Enan's duo partner.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a conversation similar to this, talking about like young artists who break it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And Alan was saying how he, I don't want to say the wrong thing that he said or misrepresent him, but he said something along the lines of he kind of feels bad for them because, how are they going to duplicate that success? And are they prepared to handle all of that?
Yeah.
Have you seen things like that in the field with people you may know that handled it gracefully?
It's interesting because, my proximity to kind of young fame, I guess if you could call it that, is only through my work at the Gilmore. And you definitely see like these young artists come through, and some continue that performing career on the piano, and some choose wildly different paths. And some are actively grappling with, do they keep pushing or do they go some other direction? So I haven't seen a lot of the early stuff. Most of my experience with my colleagues, my friends, even my students I've taught, they kind of have the slow burn, the slow growth approach, to where they'll be just doing their thing, and all of a sudden, like I had one student at Kalamazoo College who wrote a whole album for his senior project. It was really good. And then he kind of like just disappeared in Chicago for a couple of years. I don't know what he was doing. Next time I checked in with him, like he was touring the world with a band called Whitney, and making music all over the place. I'm like, cool, but it didn't happen overnight, is my point. And so I see more of that slow build than I do the young fame experience.
Right.
I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's probably easier to handle with more maturity and less decisions. Well, I guess more knowledge and awareness happens over time as you approach that.
Mm-hmm.
And then most of the people I know aren't even like famous. It's just like they have decent, good careers,
Right.
I think that's the other thing, like that people think they need to be famous to make a living, but you don't, you just need a consistent, varied income career,
Yeah, I imagine that social media certainly influences that a lot. The appearance of like Instagram influencers.
Yeah.
I don't even like that term, honestly. I understand it, but I just I don't know. It's I don't know.
It kind of misconstrues like what the rest of the world actually does.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Or how people that are fairly normal achieve, moderate stability.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. It's one thing where with my business coach, we've talked about that sort of stuff and how people who use these platforms to start their career, the biggest issue is if that platform's gone tomorrow, what happens?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And, I mean, obviously there's things to put in place like Patreon and whatnot, but then again, you're also still relying on Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird balance, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not even gonna pretend like I know the answer to these things, but
Yeah, I think for the social media side of things, just not to get too caught up in all the stats, There's so much more to building actual relationships than just good socials. I see a lot of my a lot of my college students get caught up in the social media side of it. It's like, well, I need more likes or more this, or I need to buy ads even. I'm like, no, try working with the people you know first and build from there. And if you can, I think you can build more real natural connections. You'll find that, you won't be reliant on the fickle social media trends,
Right.
So
yeah, that's great advice. I mean, and especially because it's strengthening the community too.
exactly. Yeah. But I mean, social media is part of our reality, right? It's kind of important to have, but I guess it's not the end all.
Yeah. It's like, have you seen the documentary, The Social Dilemma?
No, I haven't. No.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, they mainly just talk about how all social media platforms and like Google and everything, they buy your attention, and they have these systems in place, like the algorithms that are meant to learn your habits and like put something on your Facebook feed at the right time when you're like need that dopamine kick, and they're.
Yeah,
But
that makes sense. It's crazy.
yeah, it's a wild thing, but yeah, I've talked about it a few times on here because I think that you know it's such an important thing. Like you were just saying, like we really do need it. It's so necessary for our field, but at the same time, it's like that fine line between love and hate. It's
yeah, and like, I mean, I've never gotten opportunity from a Twitter post, right? I feel like the new music Twitter scene is really supportive and really helpful, but most of my projects or collaborations come together because of me messaging people or talking to them directly or reaching out to people, not necessarily just from blanket posts, right? Or from viral posts even. There's my son.
Hey, there's the cameo.
What you doing, buddy? How's it going? Yeah, so Mama's calling you. I think you need a diaper change too. Ooh.
He's gonna get the Oscar for supporting actor.
Thanks coming on video calls. Watch out, bud. He's playing with keyboards too. I have keyboards back here, so
starting him early.
Yeah, for sure. So.
Yeah, I have a question that's a little bit more personal for me, but sure. With Twitter, for example, I don't have a Twitter account, and but so much of what I see about Twitter just out in the world is always like, whenever something bad happens to someone, it's through Twitter. It's like
I've heard a lot of that.
Yeah,
I don't actively see a lot of that on the people I follow. I think that's also something that I've brought up in my entrepreneurship classes, is like trying to curate your social media for your business use and professional use. Like I have a lot of family on my Facebook that drive me crazy, and sometimes I get caught in these political feeds where it's dumpster fires, right? But Twitter, like I don't really know any of my family on Twitter, and it's really all people making music in different varieties. And so I find that the stuff that I'm attracted to on Twitter is people that have different careers in music, specifically new music, and we all kind of talk about different things. And it's good, I'm sure there's a lot of dumpster fires on Twitter that kind of get fed to you, but because it's not relying on always who you follow. But I guess I don't see a lot of it because I've kind of curated my feed to be the things that I'm just interested in, which is the music side of it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that description right there, I feel pretty convinced on it now.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because there's a lot of really cool people on Twitter, and like, it's honestly like really benefited me being able to talk to these people, and the few times where I've met them in real life, it's like we almost kind of know who we are, right? I always not. You can call it a claim to fame. I'm not really I'm not a well-known composer at all. I barely write music half the time. But like I was at a conference probably like 5 years ago at some point at DePaul University. It was a one-time conference called the 21st Century Musician. And I was in line getting some coffee, and Judd Greenstein, the composer from New York, was behind me, and He's like, don't I know you? I was like, yeah, maybe, but only from Twitter, you know? He's like, we never met before. But it was kind of fun because like me being essentially a nobody in the world of composition was able to strike up a conversation from a simple digital connection.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's lots of people I know on Twitter and in the music circles that I've never met, but I would totally like hang out with in person. And if we have a project to collaborate on, cool, you know? So
yeah, and this is all like the great things that we were talking about a moment ago about social media. Like you're able to connect with someone who lives on the other side of the country or the world.
yeah.
And then you finally meet and it's like, hey man, let's get a beer. This is so cool, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Or even or especially like your label, you know?
Yeah. You don't know. But there's like the people that are doing interesting things, you can find them and you can connect with them at the base level, right? And kind of keep up on what's going on.